Unleash your inner strength, master life's challenges like a Navy SEAL with these expert tips. Phillip W. Koontz offers practical lessons of peace of mind while preparing for the unknown. And in overcoming adversity, he offers a Navy SEAL's advice on facing many of life's challenges. In this video, Phillip discusses aspects of preparation, positivism, perseverance, pack, teamwork, and progress. Watch and learn from Phillip on overcoming adversity and coming face to face with the unknown with total calm and control. Welcome to the Wellness Driven Life Show. Make sure to subscribe so you have future notifications of when we go live. And you're about to go on a wellness driven ride. Welcome to the show, and let me tell you a little bit about our fascinating guest today. Phillip Koontz, a former Navy SEAL, uses his life lessons to help others in their personal and professional lives. He is a successful motivational speaker, author of The Truth Behind My Trident, and holds a master's degree in leadership. Phillip also mentors Special Forces candidates, volunteers for a nonprofit that rescues children from sexual exploitation, and tailors his inspiring stories to his audience. Please help me welcome the man himself, Phillip.
Hey, April. How you doing? Thanks for having me on the show.
I'm great. Thank you so much for being here. You are our first SEAL on the Wellness Driven Life Show.
Yes. Hey, that means I'm first place, right? So that's good.
100%, always first place. And
right.
So I'm so excited to share with the audience a little bit about your background. I mean, it's such a small percentage of the population that really is able to go through the training that you've gone and have that mental fortitude, et cetera. And not only that, but anyone who comes out through that is, like yourself, who's really giving back. You're teaching, you're coaching, you're leading others, how to lead a better life, through life's adversities based on what you've gone through. So let's start out by introducing yourself a little bit to the audience.
Great. And hey, just as a caveat, if my Wi-Fi or whatever gets a little choppy, you need for me to repeat anything, let me know. I'm out here in Colorado, so I'll just start there. I'm out here in Colorado in the wilderness, in the woods, with really crappy internet. But hey, we make the best with what we have. My name's Phillip Koontz. I'm out here in Colorado with my wife and 5 kids. I've got my own little fire team of kids that I'm so proud of. They're definitely ready to be out of school. They got about like 1 more week of school left, and they're chanking at the bit. Let's see. I could go into a lot of detail, but just maybe 50,000-foot view. I've got my master's in leadership. I've been a public speaker and an executive business coach for the last 8 years. And let's see. I have 4 different presentations that I do that people call me on. I'm pretty busy, traveling almost every week just around the country, giving these motivational and hopefully inspiring presentations. Let's see, I've been out here in Colorado for about 8 years now. And what else do you want to know about me? The author, I've got my book here, The Truth Behind My Trident. I've had this out and released now for like the last 4 years or so. So just loving it. Yeah, really, really busy, but loving life and having fun.
Yeah, well, that's the importance of living, right? Is that really to have fun. And so I want to jump right in. Let's do this and tell the audience a little bit about what that training is. For people who don't know, what it looks like. When you go into to be a Navy SEAL, walk us through that process, because there's a very extensive time period with that, and an extensive journey on, phase by phase by phase.
Sure. So I was on SEAL Team 10 for about 6 years. I got out for family reasons, and it turns out that being a good Navy SEAL and a good dad, they're like oil and water. They just don't mix. So I got out
Mm.
honorably discharged. I was a contractor a little bit after that, and then that's when I got my master's and everything. But yes, as far as the training goes, it's intense. So the first block of our training is called BUDS. And BUD stands for Basic Underwater Demolition SEAL. And it is 6 months held right there in Coronado, California. And it's divided into 3 different phases. So the first 2 months, the sole job of the instructors is just to get you to quit, make life as miserable as possible for you.
Right.
So my BUDS class 253, we started with 223 guys and we finished with 21. And
Wow.
so the attrition rate in BUDS is around 80 to 90%. Really, April, depending on what time of the year you go through, and really how cold the water is. And luckily, I got the bragging rights. I went through a winter class. So first phase was in November, December timeframe. The Pacific was in the mid 50s at that time, so pretty darn
Okay.
cold. Second phase then is all about diving. So they teach us scuba system, but with scuba, you can't use that for our clandestine maritime operations because you got to have a bunch of bubbles rising to the surface, right? The bad guys are like, wait a second. So they
Right.
teach us a second underwater breathing apparatus called the Draeger, which doesn't emit any bubbles whatsoever. So that's really cool. That second phase is all about diving. And then third phase of BUDS is all about the land. So land warfare. We pick up some pistols and some rifles for the first time, really learn how to shoot like experts. We get to play with some demo, get to blow some stuff up. And it's all about land navigation, land warfare. We do some field training exercises. Half of third phase is out on San Clemente Island, right off the coast there of Coronado. So that's kind of BUDS in a nutshell, if you will. And then of course there's Hell Week. Hell Week generally falls around week 4 or week 5, really smack dab right in the middle of first phase. And that's where about 40% of the attrition rate happens, is right there during Hell Week. And
But
then,
that's why it's Hell Week, right? Because they're really trying to phase out the ones
yeah,
who, you've made it through this first 3, and let's see what else you got, because there's more to come, buddy. Right?
oh yeah. It like really all I remember about Hell Week is that it was cold, dark, and wet. It was miserable, and so don't tell my wife this. This is just between you and me and all of our listeners right now. And I'm just kidding. She knows this, but the best weekend of my life was right after Hell Week. So Hell Week is where we go for
Mm.
5.5 days. It starts on a Sunday night. It ends the following Friday afternoon. That's where we go for 5.5 days with 2 total hours of sleep. They give us 1 hour of sleep on a Thursday morning, 1 on a Friday morning. But the weekend after Hell Week was amazing because all we got to do was just eat and sleep pretty much the whole time. So when we're done with our medical checks, no joke, I polished off a large Papa John's pizza, 2 McDonald's Big Macs, a king size Snickers bar, and I fell asleep for 13 hours straight. And then it's just
Wow.
rinse and repeat through the whole weekend. So it's
That
amazing.
puts another definition on carb up, like
Yeah,
it.
yeah. Well, you actually lose weight in BUDS, believe it or not. Regardless of how much you eat, you still lose weight. We burn about 10,000 calories on an average day in BUDS. And in Hell Week, you almost double that. It's around 18,000 calories during Hell Week. So it's just one evolution after another for literally 5.5 days straight.
Wow. So,
Yep.
and I know a little bit, but not a lot. Is there, because I know they're testing mind, body, spirit, right? What's
Yep.
the spirit aspect of that, of where you're really tested?
Yeah, we call that a gut check. If you really have what it takes, if you really want it bad enough, if you've got the perspective, just taking it one evolution at a time. If you really have the perspective of this is really what I want to do, they do a really good job of weeding those guys out. So as far as just the spirit goes, of course, you can't test that until you're actually in the adversity, until you're actually in the grind every single
Mhm.
day. And that's really where, like I said, it's really a gut check in buds. If you really want, especially during first phase there, so they make life as miserable as possible for you to really see if you've got what it takes between your two ears to mentally persevere, through that time. If you've got what it takes physically, and then like you said as well too, just on the spiritual side too, and the spiritual, kind of aspect of it, the spirit, it gets tested, it gets hard. It's it's yeah, it's a figurative punch in the stomach every day. Let me just say that.
Well, and you mentioned that Hell Week, you barely remember it. Like it was cold and wet and awful. And so I'm sure there's so much of you that just like mentally you can't go back and recall all of the things. But I'm also kind of curious about through your training, you talked about the bubbles, right? And how now you have to build an awareness of what types of things are going to notify that the enemy is there, like notify the enemy that hey, we're here, right? So you can't have bubbles,
Right.
right? There's a lot of things in that. I remember with my police training, uh, one of the first times I mean, I had to be like super aware, but you don't know until you know, right? And you're in the training and you start learning these things. But I remember I closed the car door a little too loud as we were at night sneaking up on a house. And just, having my partner just give me that look, like don't fuck this up. Excuse
Yeah.
my French. But
Yeah. Yeah.
and not only that, but like even thinking I have my smartwatch. So when it lights up, and I
Yeah.
can't get it to light up, but you guys, everybody knows what that is. But those little things, you can't light up
Yeah.
because so I'm curious with all of that. Are there instances that you remember where it's obvious to you now because you've done the training, but at that moment it wasn't and you had to learn it?
Oh my gosh, like
So
it's
many.
so many. Yeah, that paying attention to detail is so
Yeah.
unbelievably important. From,
Yeah.
I mean, how you tie your shoes to, where you turn in a room, to even the illumination aspect that you were talking about. Like when we're
Yeah.
diving, we have like this the reflection, so you can't have anything that's going to be reflecting the moonlight whatsoever. So you have to cover it in tape. Our when we're diving, we have our depth gauges and we've got our compasses and then our watches for the time. And yeah, you can't have anything that's going to reflect the light. And so we have little chem lights. It's really fun. We have these tiny little chem lights, like the cutest little chem lights you've ever seen. They're about this big. And we put them on our watch and then we cover it with duct tape, or what we call
Mm.
rigger's tape. It's basically the same thing in the Navy. So you don't have that illumination from the top. They can't see that, but only you can see, and just illuminates it just enough for you to be able to read your instruments while you're diving. But I mean, yeah, it's drinking through a fire hose, and I'm sure you can relate to that in your training as well too. When you're in buds, it's drinking through a fire hose. When you're in SQT, that's an additional 6 months after buds, where it stands for SEAL qualification training, and that the goal of SQT is to take the skills that you learned in buds and to really fine tune those skills to then prepare you to
Mm.
get to a SEAL team. And so that's 6 months. So that's a drinking through a fire hose experience every single day. And then you get to the SEAL teams, and you're a new guy. You're at the bottom of the totem pole, and you're learning diving at a whole new level. You're learning CQC, close quarter combat, at a whole new level. We have winter warfare. We have land warfare out in Fort Chaffee area. We've got high altitude Humvee training, mount training as well in Kentucky. So I mean, it's just you're constantly just learning, and trying not to make mistakes. So I
Yeah.
mean, I could tell story upon story if you want me to, but no, it's up to you. But I mean, I can
I
really
just think
relate to.
it's an interesting perspective that not everybody thinks about. When you're in it and you're going through this stuff, there's so much to it, and you're right. It's fire is the face. It's constant learning and failing. You, you know,
Mhm.
that's how it is, right? You learn when you fail. And so that's a lot of it. And can you take it? I think that's part of the training is, how much can you take when you've failed so many times? You just keep up and keep going and keep going.
And see, and that's the key right there, April, is a lot of people, and I actually fell into this trap myself. I started making so many mistakes. I started failing so much that I actually viewed myself as a mistake. And there's a really
Mhm.
powerful distinction there. It's subtle, but it's very powerful. Failing says I screwed up, but failure says I am a screw up. And if we allow that shame and that regret to really attack our identities at the core of who we are and what makes us individuals and unique people, then that's when it gets really dangerous, because that shame can really start to erode, your confidence, and it can be paralyzing.
It can be. So, well, let's jump into that for the audience. When we, whatever we're experiencing in life, we can get to that point, right? Because failure is a part of life. And like you said, once we start moving into that, I'm the failure, and you put it so heavily on yourself and moving into that shame aspect. What are some things that, you've learned through all of this, through all of that adversity, that you can, give to the audience to kind of think about and utilize?
Yeah, great question. I think first and foremost, we have to realize that we have those tapes that we're playing in our mind. And I don't know about you, but a lot of us on this planet, we have these negative tapes that we play that have been spoken over us ever since we were children sometimes. And so we've
Mm-hmm.
been playing these tapes for decades and decades of our life, and it almost becomes like a part of our personality, a part of who we are. So first and foremost, it's recognizing what are those really unhealthy coping mechanisms, what are those unhealthy tapes and those messages, that self-talk that we have that really start to impact us. And then once you've realized it, then it becomes a lot easier. But you have to have good EQ, or emotional intelligence. You really have to know who you are, what really kind of makes you up, right? And have that awareness of knowing, okay, I'm starting to fall into that trap again. I'm not going to go down that road, but instead I'm going to speak positively to myself. I'm going to speak truth to myself. This is who I am. Sometimes as a business coach and a life coach, I even tell my clients, and I do this too, I'm like, hey, that's sticky note worthy right there. Write that down, put it on the mirror, in your bathroom, put it somewhere in your car, put it on your computer, wherever you're going to see it several times a day, because those truths are priceless. Those truths are the ones that we want to cling to, and to really, it's called cognitive reconditioning, really start to form those new neurological pathways in our brain, where we can start thinking more positively and really start to adopt and adapt the truth, right, really about us, to help us combat those lies and some of the negative tapes that we have in our minds. And we all have them too. So if you're listening right now and you're like, well, I've got a lot of those, join the crowd. I've got those too that I still struggle with. So
Oh yeah, it's a constant, right? That I mean, we always have to bring ourselves back to. And I love that you brought up emotional intelligence, because it's one thing to have the the physical strength to do things and to show up that way, and it's a totally another thing when you have that emotional intelligence aspect. I love how you show up, because you're such a down to earth guy. I mean, even though you come from the military background, people could have a lot of observations or thoughts on what that looks like. And you really show up very well, which is why you're able to coach others in the world and be such a great leader.
yeah, yeah. I tell people all the time, April, I said, hey, 80% of life is just showing up. Just show up. And the other 20% is, what we have to work on, and how we can grow as individuals and as people, and as fathers and as husbands and as wives and mothers. There's a lot of growth in life, but 80% of it is just, it's showing up, and it's the willingness to want to grow, and the willingness to want to learn and to better yourself. A lot of us get stuck, like, as we're just bebopping through life, it's like quicksand. We just get stuck in this quicksand, and it's very subtle. It's hard to recognize sometimes when we're stuck, and that's where that emotional intelligence comes in, to really identify, oh, wow, I'm kind of in a really challenging season right now. I'm battling with a lot of these things. I've started to develop some pretty unhealthy habits in my life, or even coping mechanisms, right? That we want to turn towards, that we're all tempted to turn towards to help numb the pain, right, that we're going through. So it's recognizing, no, I picture a stop sign. I kid you not. I've got 5 S's when it comes to really stopping myself and redirecting myself. But the second one is stop, the word stop. And I literally picture a stop sign. I'm like, nope, like stop, not going there, not going down that road, because there's nothing but negativity, destruction, and a lot of pain,
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go into our first commercial, give you a moment to take a drink and everything. But when we come back, I want to talk about just that, how easy it is to fall into depression and when we're making transitions into something else. So you talked about, you left maybe a little earlier than you wanted to. I don't know, but because you had a family. And like you said, it doesn't really make any sense to be living this life and trying to be the family man, the father at the same time. And so when we get back, let's talk a little bit about that. Stay tuned.
KimJacobsConsulting.com. People say opportunity knocks on every door. Right. No, opportunity stands by silently waiting for you to recognize it. So I want you to recognize that this is a time for you. This is an incredible time to have your own talk show. It establishes a level of credibility.
Yes.
And by being exposed to people on a regular basis, it allows you to strategically begin to impact and attract your audience. She can take you in a place in yourself that you can't go by yourself. So go to KimJacobsConsulting.com. That's KimJacobsConsulting.com. Did I say KimJacobsConsulting.com? Yes, you did. Very good. Make sure you go there and sign up for the coaching, and we're looking forward to working with you. You have something special. You have greatness within you.
All right. One of my coaches, and speaking of great coaches, here we are back with Phillip Koontz. And so let's dig in a little bit on transition. And I like that we brought up emotional intelligence, because I feel you have to have an immense amount of emotional intelligence to make transitions a little more, flow well. Because when we're used to something and a certain lifestyle for so long, it's really ingrained. And when we shift to something else, even though it's with great intentions, I want to show up now and be more a part of my family. But yet it's a death of sorts, and I'm sure that you experienced that. I know that I did when I transitioned outside of law enforcement into this other world. What was that like for you?
Wow. It was hard. There's a lot of military members, law enforcement, first responders, people in the medical world, everybody, if you do something long enough, it becomes a part of who you are. It becomes a part of your identity. And when you transition out of that, you have a loss of identity, and some people really struggle with that. I know I did. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm no longer, a Navy SEAL. Even though, like once a Navy SEAL, always a Navy SEAL kind of thing. But I'm like, I'm never going to be able to operate again, and some of the physical ailments that I had just from my training, I've got a couple herniated discs in my lower back. My labrum is torn 340 degrees. There's just some things that physically I'm not able to do anymore either. And that transition was really hard for me. I think one of the things, it was a turning point for me. I really had what I call a come to Jesus moment, where I had to give myself permission to have a bad day. I was so used to just telling everybody, hey, I'm good, especially in the SEAL teams. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
Like, I'm fine. Like, just leave me alone. Right. And
I think even as a man, how we're raised, and absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. So I had to really come to terms with, it's okay to not be okay.
Yeah.
And that was hard for me to struggle with. It might seem elementary. It might seem kind of obvious, but man, it was revolutionary for me when I just had to give myself permission to have a bad day and realize, come to the realization that it's okay to not be okay. And, I was struggling with some things, with some PTSD when I came out, and had to go see a counselor, right? And get some tools in my figurative tool belt. I had to go, do EMDR, to really help work through some of my issues from my times of being in the SEAL teams and seeing what I saw and experiencing what I experienced. So, the VA's done a good job with the mental, health. I think over the last 10 years, I think they've gotten a little bit better with that. So yeah, I just give yourself permission to not be okay, and reach out to professionals to be able to really help you. But I did, April. I went through a pretty significant grieving process, and it's interesting, the grieving that I went through, I had to grieve the loss of opportunity. I've been through a lot of grieving with loved ones in my past, and I've grieved a lot of things, but that was foreign to me, grieving the loss of opportunity. And that was pretty significant. And just to be honest with you, I still struggle with it. I mean, every single day, if I think about it long enough, I actually have guilt still. I didn't serve long enough. In a number of years, I didn't serve long. I didn't stay in long enough. I didn't go on enough missions. I didn't have enough deployments. It's something that, I think I just probably struggle with and have to deal with for the rest of my life. But, when you have that certain personality of like that warrior spirit inside of you, which I know you do, and then all of a sudden you're like thrown into civilian life and you're like, what is going on? You really have that identity crisis of like, oh, now what the F do I do with my life? And so I had my family, I knew I was a father. So for those of you listening, I think it's really important. One of the exercises I walk through with my clients initially is your values. What are your very core values? What are 3 core personal values and professional values? And I think that really helped anchor me because, family was definitely one of those. And so, my faith as well definitely helped anchor me in those times where I was struggling with my identity and that sort of thing. So
something greater than yourself. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, and that's, I'm a public speaker now. And so, in my mind, not to discount what I do, but I'm not over there, like literally ridding the world of evil, which is the highest calling that I think that I could have. But at least right now, what wakes me up and gets me out of bed in the morning, that perspective, that higher calling is I want to make a positive, lasting impact in the lives of everyone that I talk to. And so that's kind of more of my higher calling professionally, at least. And then of course, on a personal level, it's, being the very best dad and husband and person that I can be.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you're in good company there. I relate so much to what you're saying and the identity crisis. And that could happen with anything, like you said, with anything that people have done for a long time. Whether we've had, even with a move, you could make it very simple, but it just depends on our perception, and how we're handling that, but it can have a huge impact. I remember, I just think it's funny when you say coming from, a certain field and then going into the civilian world and how different that is. And I just remember, driving in my personal vehicle and seeing somebody make an offense, and I went and I put my hand down to turn my lights and sirens on, and I was like, oh yeah, that's not there. But it's definitely it takes a while to learn a new way of life and to be able to utilize the resources. I love that you've shared that. Thank you so much for being vulnerable in that aspect, because what's powerful about it, Phillip, is that you realize you're not alone. And then we get that connection piece where we're all living this very human experience.
Huge.
So
that connection and vulnerability and transparency is huge. One of the drums that I like to beat a lot is that teamwork, is that pack, your pack. Who are the 4 or 5 people? It doesn't take a whole lot of people, but who are the 3, 4, 5 people in your life that you can really, call on at 2, 3 o'clock in the morning and just let them know, hey, you know what? I'm not doing very good and I need some help.
Yeah, I love that. I watched another segment on you. You compared it to a trampoline. You want to say that?
Oh yeah, sure. So yeah, that's how I picture my pack is, like with a trampoline, every trampoline needs at least 4 or 5 legs in order to keep it up and stable, right? And similarly, as human beings, we are all created to live and thrive in community. We all need each other. We're not meant to shoulder as leaders or as moms and dads and spouses. I mean, we're not meant to shoulder all the responsibility. We're not meant to shoulder all the commitments, and the stress and the anxiety. We can't, which is one of the reasons why COVID was so hard, because we're all quarantined, right? But I mean, we're not meant to, as human beings, to shoulder all of that. So yeah, the trampoline, 4 or 5 legs of the trampoline. So who are the legs of your trampoline?
Absolutely. I love that metaphor and how you put that. I'm going to go ahead and put this up on the screen. This is Empowering Transitions Life Coaching. This is one of our sponsors, Hillary Hill. She's a transitioning life coach, and she actually specializes with military transitions. She's very well versed in that. And so if anyone listening is a veteran or they're making any sort of transitions in life, she's an incredible resource. You can find her at Hillary at empoweringtransitionslc.com. So I'll leave that up there for a little bit since we're on the topic. I also want to go back on that value statement, because I think that's very important. You talked about how the importance of really knowing and taking some time to understand what our, core values are. Brant Menswar, who was on the show earlier this week or last week, and he does a really good assessment, but he also, hones in on the importance of finding those core values.
Yep, it's huge.
It is.
I was going to say too, if you're struggling, like, what are my core values? There's a lot of core values that you can Google. There's sheets and everything that you can Google. And the hardest part of that, because there's like 50 or 60 of them, is narrowing it down to your top 3 that really define you, who you are personally, and then 3 that define you professionally as well too. And one other thing real quick, April, and I'm sure Hillary does this too. I do this with my life coaching clients, but as far as EQ goes, or emotional intelligence, if people are out there kind of scratching their head, like, this is a buzzword, I've been hearing this a lot, but like, how in the world do I gain EQ, right? I mean, is that like a light switch? Like, do I flip it on? Like, all of a sudden I've got emotional intelligence. Well, I'm a really practical guy. So the first step that I would recommend, there are a lot of free personality tests that are out there. And the 4 personality tests that I encourage and I have all of my clients work through, and then I go through those results with them with a fine-tooth comb. And that really helps to build your awareness of who you are and how you are made, and what are the unique aspects of your personality. So the 4 tests, the one is the Enneagram. The second one is the DISC profile. The third one is the Strength Finders, the Gallup Strength Finders test. And then the fourth one is the 16 PI. They used to be known as the Myers-Briggs. So those are the 4 personality tests, and they're all free online, unless you want to, pay for the full report kind of thing, which they're not really all that expensive. But that'll give you a good baseline of really knowing, okay, like, wow, I actually learned some new things about myself. And as you're learning more about yourself, guess what? You're gaining and increasing your EQ, your emotional intelligence.
Oh, that's a brilliant way to put it. You're right. I mean, that's just a basic, brilliant way to put it. As you learn about yourself, you're gaining emotional intelligence.
Yeah.
That's simply put. I love it. Good way to put it. So let's talk a little bit about your book. You named the book. Oh no, I don't have it. You know it. The Truth Behind My Trident.
My Trident, yeah.
So I would love to know a little bit about, just give a couple of juicy details on what that is, what you expose. And also, I'm very curious about the trident and the meaning behind that, because there's a lot of different things, and there's even some, key phrases that the military uses with it.
Yeah, sure. So I'll answer the second question first to preface the book, because a lot of people are like, the truth behind my what?
Right.
What's a trident? So I actually have with me today on the show the very first trident that I was ever pinned. So this is our military insignia.
Love that. Let me put you on, and so we can zoom in on that. There we go.
I'll hold it a little bit closer. There it is. So that's the very first trident I was ever pinned. We like to call this our bird or our Budweiser. And this is what distinguishes us from other branches of the military, along with distinguishing, our job or our rate in the military as well too. The trident, so SEAL, if those of you listening thought that Navy SEALs were named after the animal, and unfortunately that's not accurate. So SEAL is an acronym. We love our acronyms in the military. So SEAL stands for sea, air, and land. So there's 4 of those words, and there's 4 images in the trident to represent those. So for the sea, there is Poseidon's pitchfork right there, or the actual trident. There's the anchor, which is right here, the anchor for sea. The eagle stands for air, and then the eagle is holding a flintlock pistol in his talons, and that represents the land. So those are the 4 components that are in the trident: the sea, air, and land. So it's our military insignia. And so the truth behind my trident is basically, April, I wrote the book I wish I would have read before going into the military. It's one of those.
Nice.
It wouldn't have discouraged me from going into the military, into the SEAL teams, but it would have helped me go in with eyes wider open, maybe of like what to expect. So, Hollywood does a really good job of portraying the missions of SEALs, right? A lot of us have seen Zero Dark 30 and Lone Survivor and 13 Hours, Act of Valor, all of that. But I actually pushed the figurative pause button one day, and I'm like, hold on a second. This is all of what Hollywood is portraying right now. And I calculated this out, and that's only 3% of our time is actually boots on the ground conducting our missions. And that's all, and that's basically all. Yeah, that's all that Hollywood is really portraying.
What is the term? You don't rise to the level of your courage, you fall to the level of your training.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah. So in my book, I wanted to capture the other 97% of our time, which is in preparation and training for the 3% of our time that's actually spent boots on the ground conducting our missions. And I like to pull back the curtain a little bit and show the general public what an average day in the life of a Navy SEAL looks like as I walk through my own journey a little bit before, mostly during my time in the SEAL teams, and then a little bit afterwards.
Yeah. So I'm curious too about the trident. Well, let's start with this, because as I was researching it a little bit, they have this term. I don't know if I'm a fan of it yet, but I'm curious what that meaning is. But they call it the chicken on a fork. Is that what it's called? Have you heard? I'm sure you've heard that, but I'm just curious what that.
Yeah, I have heard that, but SEALs team guys, we don't use that. Our nicknames for our chicken on a fork. It's been that's a flashback for me, right? A trip down memory lane. So yeah, I have heard that. It's been a while since I've heard that, but our bird is what we call it, or our Budweiser is what our nicknames that we as SEALs call and refer to our tridents.
And so when we look at a trident, it has the 3 prongs. And it seems to me that the 3 just comes up so often. I know that you utilize the number 3 throughout your training, the 3 things, right? You have the 3 phases, and there's also, I don't know, three tactics. The 3s just seem to come up over and over. Is there a deeper root from where that stems, the number 3?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that in the 8 years I've been doing this.
I was curious.
Yeah, I don't know. The perfect
comes up a lot though, doesn't it?
The perfect set of 3 is the Trinity, I guess, right? But yeah, I mean, even our AARs, our after action reviews, we could talk about that as far as a really good practical life discipline to use. But we ask ourselves 3 basic questions, right? What went right? What went wrong? And how can I improve? So we do use 3 a lot. Come to think of it,
even when you deliver tactically. What is it? Something you can say it, because I don't know it.
Oh, shoot. Well, yeah, we have shoot, move, and communicate. So those are 3 that we often say as well too. Yeah. Yeah.
So it just comes up so much, and 3 is easy. easy to remember. Oftentimes when we're thinking of things or we want to, have something repetitive in our mind, we use either 3 to 5, right? But we don't usually go more than that because the brains it doesn't stick as much.
Right.
So, okay, cool.
Yep.
Well, I just was curious about that.
Yeah.
I also want to talk a little bit about, it's kind of going back into the community aspect that, I just think that community part is so important. And you frame it in the way of who's got your 6.
Yeah, or who's got your back. Some people are like, why? What's 6? Like, what's that all about? But if you picture a clock, right? 12 o'clock is at the top, and that's the direction that we're walking, is the 12 o'clock position. So who's got your 6, meaning who's got your back? So that 6 o'clock position in the clock is the one that's going to be behind you. So who's got your back? Yeah, that's a big one. And we definitely have to have each other's back and trust each other, especially when we're in combat, when you have bullets flying by your head. You need to make sure that your brothers have your back and that you can trust each other.
Absolutely. And, in putting that into everyday life, it's just, again, having those 5 people that really you can call up at 2 a.m. So tell me a little bit about tactical knives. You've gone into that, and you have another, that's just another way that you show up. And by the way, I think that what you've done when you say that, when we talk about the death of leaving something and you feel like, I had the death of opportunity, but I feel like you've really, in a great way, created so much more door openings for yourself and the opportunities for yourself. And I know that it feels different, right? When you're not out there saving the world, where that has that deeper soul meaning to you. But you really have opened up so many other doors. And so you have another business, with the tactical knives, and then you're a speaker and you do so many other things. You've written the book and you give that way. Tell us a little bit about the tactical knives and how you got into that. And I'm just curious, when you came out of the military life, when you were thinking about, okay, what can I do and how can I show up in order to feel fulfilled?
Yeah. So I think a lot of life is really just seizing the moment, seizing the opportunities, and it can be terrifying in the moment. Change as human beings is hard,
Yeah.
and it's scary sometimes, but being willing to take the risks and learn from the mistakes is huge. So, when I got out, I was a contractor for a little while. I was on Fort Bragg and teaching sensitive site exploitation. And then after that, I actually became a pastor. So, that door opened. I was like, let's do it, and so I became a pastor for about 4 years. And then as I was towards the tail end of my speaking, or sorry, of my schooling, that's the word I was looking for, my schooling, my dad calls me. So I'm almost done with my master's in leadership. My dad calls me and he's like, hey, you have an interesting background. My dad was a financial advisor. He's like, hey, could I fly you back out to Cincinnati, spend some time with us, and could you do a client appreciation event for me? And I'm like, what's a client appreciation, Dad? But sure, if you're going to pay me, that sounds great, right? And so, so that's my dad was my first client in my public speaking business. And I was there and I was nervous as hell. I was like, oh my gosh, like I don't know if I can do this. But then it's like, okay, some of the feedback afterwards, it's like, hey, do you have a business card? And I'm like, I need one of those, And so I just kind of built it from there, and started networking with other people. And one of my goals, professional goals, was to have one speaking engagement lead to at least one more. And so that's kind of how I've built my network, so to speak, for the last 8 years. And then this is kind of a cool story. So you're talking about my knife company. I kind of fell into that one as well, too. So a karambit knife, and I've got my trusty karambit here. Our karambit knife, this was my tertiary weapon in the SEAL teams. And it's called a karambit because it's got a hawk bill shape blade to it.
Yep.
we sell sharp things with rings, so it's got a ring as well. And I use this in the SEAL teams. It's got a little pocket catch right here. It's called the Emerson Wave. So it catches on your pocket as you're pulling it out, catches on your pocket and opens up. So
now, can that be used as also? I love it. By the way, it reminds me very much of a knife I had when I was on duty. And is that like a glass breaker as well?
Yeah, there's actually a lot of law enforcement that use our karambits. Yeah. So,
yeah, I love it.
It can be used as the finger ring right here can be used as a less lethal kind of self-defense, impact weapon. It can be used to break glass. It can be used to cut seatbelts. If you're in an accident and you can't.
I did it. I saved a man's life with my knife, cutting his seatbelt and getting him out of the car. Yeah. So that's why I'm a huge proponent of knives, good ones.
Yeah. All right. So we have it live right now. I want to ask you to do a testimonial for us then for karambit. Because I
will.
Huge.
Yeah. You gotta have a way to break a window and a way to cut a seatbelt. That knife has to be sharp. And I mean, it's got to do the trick, right? I mean, literally my knife helped me save this man's life. It was a tool that I needed and I used, and the knife it matters. The type of knife, the tactical aspects of it, all of the things that it provides, that little hole, it all matters. Being able to have it in the right space where you can get it right away and be able to utilize it quickly. That all makes a difference.
It does. And it's a great everyday carry for me as well, too. So I'm opening up boxes with this thing. Cutting food with it. I was literally just separating my kids' Legos the other day as I was playing with them. They come to me like, these Legos are stuck, Dad. So I'm popping the Legos off. So I'm pulling this thing out all the time. But speaking of pulling it out all the time, so as I'm, presenting in my, public speaking career, I'll talk about the 3 lines of gear that we have. I travel with my gear, and people love to hold the helmet and the body armor and my H gear and to look at the stuff. And so I'm pulling out my knife, and so I was doing it probably the first couple years, and inevitably men and women are coming up to me afterwards like, hey, that's a really cool knife. Like, where can I get one of those? So light bulb goes off in my brain, the entrepreneur side, I guess. And I'm like, I just need to start buying a ton of these and selling them at my speaking engagements, because there's a lot of knockoffs of karambit knives. And so I'm selling them, buying a bunch and selling them. And about 5 years in, I get a phone call from the owner of Karambit Tactical Knives. This was in August of 2020, mind you. Okay, April. So this is like in the middle of COVID. He calls me up and he's like, hey, you've been a really loyal customer of mine, Phil. I'm selling the business. I've had it for about 7 years. I'm just kind of getting tired of it. What do you think? Do you want a shot at it? So I thought about it literally for like 2 seconds, and I'm like, hell yeah, I want a shot at this, right?
Yeah.
So definitely prayed about it a lot, and I'm like, okay, this is a huge decision. I talk about risky. I'm buying this like $1 million business in the middle of COVID. Like, this is either going to be the best decision or the worst decision I've ever made in my life. So my business partner, William Simpkins, he's a financial advisor in the Ashburn, Virginia area. So we're both co-owners. He's more of like the CFO. He handles all the money side of everything. But we've been owned and operated now for about the last 20 months. So we are the world's largest distributor of Karambit tactical knives, and it's been a wild ride. It's been a lot of fun. Our website is karambit.com. So it's KARAMBIT, karambit.com. That's our website. And we have, not to turn this into an infomercial, but we've got over 100 products ranging from $10 all the way up to $1,700. So if you want to pick up a Karambit, how about this? Exclusively for the people who are listening right now, enter the discount code Cutting Edge to save 10% off, just for this live video session that we're doing here. Cutting Edge, and that'll save you.
Hold on, I'm putting it in.
There you go.
All right. Does it have to be in caps or anything?
Nope. It's all either all caps or all lowercase. It doesn't matter. All
right, and it's KARAMBIT, correct?
Correct. Yep. So say that in the phonemic alphabet for me, okay? Go ahead. I'm going to put you on the
King,
spot.
Adam, Robert, Adam, Michael, boy Ida Tom, but it's different in law enforcement. Everybody knows this. I know you're laughing at me.
Yeah.
However, so no, that's cool that you're offering that, because we had a comment come in. Is there a Mother's Day sale on these knives?
There is. There is. Yep. It's so I believe it's an additional 10%. It might be 10% or 12% off, but it's mother. I think the discount code is Mother's 10, but you guys can find that on the website. Yep.
Okay, great.
I mean, let's face it. Every mom needs a knife, right? I mean, yeah.
Everybody needs a knife. Well,
my wife loves
in the hands
my
of
wife
certain
loves
people.
these. Yeah. No, my wife loves these. She's a marathon runner, and she'll, carry one while she's out on a run, especially when she's outdoors, with just all the shadiness that's going on in our world today. So she definitely feels a lot safer carrying her karambit. Her tagline is "Chicks carry karambits too," and I was like, I love that.
I do too. Well, thank you so much for sharing that aspect. I wanted to bring it in because, of my personal story. And so you're just doing a lot of cool things, that I love. And I wanted to give shout outs to. Tell me, is there anything else that you want to share with the audience?
Well, first and foremost, I would just like to thank the veterans that are on the call. So thank you guys very much. And a lot of people come up to me and they're like, Phil, sometimes just saying thank you to somebody in uniform, if I know that they've served, sometimes just saying thank you doesn't really seem like enough. And, I get that. And so what I tell my people, I say, just if you thank them for their service, that's awesome. But then say, and by the way, will you tell your family thank you for me as well? Because they're oftentimes the husbands, the wives, and the children that are at home, left holding the ball and all the responsibilities of making sure everything works properly and everything runs smoothly. They have a big responsibility as well too. So I just want to thank all the veterans that are out there, and thank you to your spouses and your children, your families who are holding down the fort, while you're gone. So thank you. Yeah.
Yes. And I didn't say that to you either. Thank you so much for your service, sir.
Yeah, you're welcome. Absolutely.
I have another comment that came in. It goes back to the training. It says, considering a small percentage of people can be SEALs, his new mission helps share that training with the world.
Yeah, I like that. Thank you. That's good encouragement for me. Yep.
Yeah, I like that too. Oh, well, it has been such a pleasure having you on the Wellness Driven Life Show. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom and your knowledge. And I want to make sure that the audience knows that we can, it's posted in the description of this, where you can find more on Philip's website and where you can find him and connect with him. And we'll make sure that we put the karambit in there as well. I'll go back and do that. And most of you are going to be watching this replay. So if you have any comments, leave them in the comments section below and we will get back to you. And again, thank you so much for your time and being on the show. And if there's nothing else, then we'll say goodbye for now.
Yeah, I guess you'll just have to have me back again because I got lots to say.
Absolutely. I would love to have you back. It's been a pleasure and a joy.
Yeah.
And I know there's so many more great stories that you can share.
Yeah. I mean, even just about personal self-care, so huge, resting and taking that time to recharge and energize yourself for at least 30 minutes to an hour every day. I mean, there's just so many things that sometimes we just, we meet the needs of everybody else, we get caught up in the moment, and it's just so hard sometimes to hit that pause button, focus on ourselves for a little bit, get what we need, realize that we're stuck. So yeah, anyways, I could go on and on and on.
Well, hey, let's dig into it a little bit. We can stay on just a few. Why not? How
Sure.
about, what are, now that you've really dived deep into parenthood, that's a totally different wow, right? Especially with 5, self-care, what does that mean to you while also serving others and the importance of that, and taking time for yourself?
Yeah, it's one of the biggest things and one of the biggest lessons that I've had to learn and to teach myself. So I would say I like to view a bucket, right? So if you can picture, as soon as you wake up in the morning every day, your bucket is full. And all throughout the day, as you're meeting the needs of others, as you're serving others, making sure other people have what they need, you're taking scoops out of that bucket. And if you don't have great self-care, if you don't take time to meditate, if you don't take time to pray, if you don't take time to do something like go to the gym or go on walk your dog or read a book for all the introverts out there, right? If you don't do something to really re-energize yourself or to fill your bucket, then guess what happens? At the very end of the day, you're on fumes. You don't have anything left to give. And especially if you're coming home at that point, then your fuse is a lot shorter with your family. You start to get more into that negative loop in your mind. And it's really a pretty destructive place to be in. And so having opportunities every day, 30 minutes to an hour to be able to rest, take a nap. As SEALs, I don't know if you knew this, April, but as SEALs, we actually take prolific naps. So before our mission, we'll have this little disc that we put on our wrists, and it communicates to our parasympathetic nervous system. It's called the New Calm. And in about 40 minutes, it's equivalent to about 3 to 4 hours of deep REM sleep. And so when there's time, and oftentimes there is, we'll do a New Calm session. We actually take a nap, and research has shown it's the equivalent of drinking 12 cups of coffee. And so it's just, it does so much for us. I mean, take a siesta, right? I mean, that's what it is. Like some of the most brilliant minds in history have taken naps, have taken opportunities throughout the day, chunks, of opportunities throughout the day to really make sure that they're getting what they need. So they're not running on fumes and end up, here's a dangerous word in the workforce nowadays. It's so real, but they don't end up burning themselves out.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Well, man, you're not wrong. We could really dive so much deeper into this and the science behind it all. I think one of the unique things that a lot of people don't know is when you're going through this extensive training, you really have to start learning all of the science behind how we are able to perform at our best and how we're able to show up. I mean, I recall one of the biggest lessons that I learned, and I carry it with me today, and it has helped me through so many traumatic events, is calming yourself down. And because you have to, like I said, you don't rise to your bravery, right? You fall to the level of your training. And so when you're in the middle of, holding somebody at gunpoint and you have to respond that way, nothing's working. Your motor skills are not there and you're freaking out. So the importance of calming yourself down and doing things such as breathing exercises to help lower that heart rate is essential. And that's something that we can carry with us, in our everyday lives, whether we're sitting in traffic and we're freaking out over that and we have to be somewhere and everything is moving so fast and you're in this high stress, you're showing up in that high stress moment, learning how to calm ourselves down, taking naps, the science behind that. And, so tell me, I think you mentioned a time, but are there times that for taking naps that help you perform better? I think you might have said that, but I missed it. My fault.
Yeah. Nowadays, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
So in between speaking engagements, I'll take a little, siesta, and it really helps energize me for the evening kind of thing. I've also learned how to breathe as well too. So they're starting to teach that in the SEAL teams, which is huge. And the proper way to breathe, right? If I was to tell everybody on the call today, hey, go ahead and just take a deep breath for me, 99% of people, you would see their chest rise and then fall, right? And unfortunately, we're just conditioned to breathe that way. No one knows like where that transition is from being a child into an adult, where we start to breathe through our chest. But if you walk around and you see toddlers, right? Like if you're at the swimming pool and you see toddlers, they have these big bellies, right? Because they're breathing through their bellies. That's how we're supposed to breathe. And when we do that, our brain releases a lot of serotonin and dopamine and oxytocin. It's a lot of those feel-good type of chemicals. And it's really like a light switch. If you're stressed out and you have a lot of that cortisol running through your body, if you learn how to breathe properly and you've developed the muscle memory behind breathing properly, it'll instantly turn that flood of cortisol off and really release a lot of those chemicals. And it really does work. It's not voodoo, right? It's not hocus
Yeah.
pocus. It's not magic, right? It really does work. And that was, I referred earlier in the show about some of the tools that I had to keep in my figurative tool belt that I learned, and breathing was one of those. It's a huge one.
It is. It is that really was one of the biggest things to help calm down and bring you back to be able to respond properly and effectively. And Manly brought in the comment on combat, breathe and focus. So On Combat is a book that was one of the books that I really, really enjoyed as I was, researching and trying to better myself. I'm sure you're familiar with that too. It's like, how do I continue to just learn and grow and be better, show up better? And a lot of that's through books and, what has worked for other people, learning about that emotional intelligence aspect. So yeah, the breath is really important. And then you start learning about things that Wim Hof has done. And, I'm surprised. I'm very curious now, even more curious. You said that they're starting to do breath work now in the SEALs. Are you telling me that they weren't doing that when you were training? This is something that's new?
It is a lot of the
Wow.
mindfulness meditation aspect, of it. Like when you come back from a mission, and you're still keyed up, you got the adrenaline still going through your body, and you're having a hard time falling asleep. I mean, a lot of the mindfulness meditation and some of the stuff that Wim Hof talks about actually too. Some of the cold water exposure, they're starting to do, and the heat exposure as well too, and the benefits from that. I mean, that's a whole nother episode, right? That I've been working on, and even something as easy as drinking water, throughout the day is huge. One of my goals is to drink half of my body weight in fluid ounces. So I'm drinking just under 100 fluid ounces of water every day, and that's made a huge impact on that afternoon lull where I used to drink a cup of coffee. Now, if I stay hydrated, I'm like, wow, I actually have a lot of energy, and I don't get that afternoon slump. So just little things like
Yeah.
that we can do physically that really make a big difference.
Yeah. So mindfulness meditation, water, being outside, physical activity, those are all good things. And yeah, uh, breathing
and always
properly.
and always agreeing with my wife. I would add that too. Yeah, like yes, honey, yes, dear.
Yes. It
Yeah,
does help when we are able to have
happy
good
wife, happy
relations.
life. That's right.
Yeah,
That's
can you
right.
say that again? I didn't hear.
Yeah, happy wife. Get your husband down here real quick. Happy wife, happy life, buddy. Yep, yep.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Cool. Well, anything else you want to talk about and share? Because I could keep going too.
I think everybody's probably tuned out at this point. What are we, like, just over an hour? So yeah, maybe next time. Yeah, but off the top, I mean, a lot with gratitude, right? Just having a really
Oh,
positive
yes.
attitude. I've got a lot of really great practical exercises to help build new neurological pathways in your brain to think more positively, and to develop that attitude of gratitude's huge too. So there's so much stuff. It's kind of drinking through a fire hose right now, so I don't want to overwhelm anybody, but there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of really good stuff that's out there.
There's so much that we can learn. Yeah. And again, it's the continuance. So is there going to be a book number 2?
A lot of people ask me that. Yeah, I'm thinking about pulling the trigger on that one over the next year or so, and getting another book out there probably. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you're so knowledgeable and you're obviously continuing to learn and grow to be able to bring this to people. And like Manly said before, considering the small percentage of Navy SEALs that there are out there, and, the mission of you is really helping people and bringing that training to us, just the humble basic people living out here in the world, not knowing. So thank you for educating us and teaching us something new.
Yeah, you're welcome, April. Thanks again for having me on the show. It's been an honor and a privilege for me. Thank you.
Oh, my pleasure. It's been an honor and a pleasure for us as well. So thank you so much for being on the show. And without further ado, I will say Goodbye for now, and stay tuned until tomorrow. Bye.